Hi, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us in studio today. I'm Deborah Kobylt, host of Deborah Kobylt Live. We have a beautiful and fascinating guest in studio with us today, Kat Kramer. Thanks for being here.
I'm so happy to be here.
Oh,
Thanks for the fascinating part.
Well, you are fascinating. Come on, girl. And we also have your mom. She's here
Yeah.
too. She's in the studio with us, Karen Sharp.
She's around here someplace.
She's around
right?
here somewhere. She's making sure that we look good, is what she's doing. So thank you, Mom,
Yeah.
for being here.
Thank you.
So you probably need no introduction, but for
Oh,
those
I
who
don't
don't know, you're an actress, you're a producer, you're an influencer, a filmmaker, a philanthropist. You give back a lot. A former Miss Golden Globe and daughter to Stanley Kramer. I mean, we all love Stanley Kramer's films, right?
I do. I hope everybody else does.
And what did we say, right? The apple didn't fall far from the tree with you. Because Dad did films that had a real social justice point to them, right?
Every movie he made 35 films, and all of them had a message.
Do you have a favorite?
Well, I have different favorites. Like, I love Inherit the Wind, just because it was the famous play, and I love the message. I especially love Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, because that was the film my godmother did with him.
And your godmother
Katharine
is
Hepburn.
I mean, could you imagine having a godmother, Katharine Hepburn? I mean, that's what a life you've led. So we were going to hear all about her. I know you do a lot of work with Lily Tomlin. We're going to hear about everybody in your circle by the time we're finished with this interview. But Guess Who's Coming to Dinner must be one of my favorites.
Yeah, it's a classic.
I mean, it was made before I even knew about the film, but when I finally got to see it and I looked at it, I thought, wow. I mean, it was an issue to have a black man be interested in a white girl. Look how far we've come, right?
Yeah, and yet there's still interest in that story, and they're doing a theatrical version of it with the John Ruskin, the theater group. They're actually doing a live play version of the movie coming up around my birthday in April, which is, I got to check that out. But I also love It's a Mad, 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 Mad World.
Yes.
And that was my father's only comedy. He never, that was the comedy to end all comedies, and he basically made it on a dare. But that's everybody's favorite film of his, and that had a message, which people don't realize, that even that film, that all-star comedy classic, was about greed. And I think that movie's like super timely now, with just the way the state of the world is.
Well, sometimes with films like that, really the message never goes out of style. There's always racism. There's always greed.
Yeah, exactly.
There's
we really
always-
need to still focus on those things.
Yeah,
though.
even you said Inherit the Wind you love. That these issues of evolution versus creationism. I love the film also Judgment at Nuremberg.
I'm so glad you mentioned that. I was
Right?
just going to mention that now. Yeah. Very timely and, truth. And that movie was it resonates so much. We had a screening of it just a few years ago for the 40th anniversary, and the place was packed. You couldn't even, even the people running the event couldn't get a seat. We had to turn people away from that.
Yeah, that's incredible. So again, Dad thought that way through his work, through his filmmaking, to have a message. So what kind of an impact did that have on you as a little kid?
Well, that's a great question, because he didn't want to be labeled as a message movie maker. I mean, he just wanted to tell these stories, and he was interested in social justice and issues that we needed to address in society that we weren't looking at in his eras. He had several eras he made these films in. It wasn't just one era. But I think it was just in my DNA, because my mom, Karen Sharp Kramer, who's around someplace here, she is the same. I mean, she instilled in my sister and me his legacy, and so I just think it was by osmosis.
Yeah, well,
I think it's just in the DNA, to be honest.
Yeah, and I even said to you on the phone, what do you do when you're not working? And I actually knew the answer before I asked you that, because this is fun to you. Your work is your joy, right?
Well, I don't know if fun is the right word. I mean, it's a lot of work. It's rewarding. But I actually am always looking for something to do for fun, because I'm so busy all the time with all the projects and all the things I'm doing.
I got you. I'll call you.
And I write too. I'm also a journalist, as you know. So I think, but helping with the social issues and actually being an activist and an advocate for animals and women's empowerment and environmental issues. And I'm also an anti-bullying activist. And I mean, there's so many issues that we need to clean up, besides all the other ones I'm not even going to mention because we'd be here all day, I don't really have time for a lot of trivial fun things. So you're right, I have to find the fun in what I'm doing.
Yeah, yeah. Let's we met actually because aren't you on the advisory board of the
am,
Los
yeah.
Angeles Press Club, which is really a phenomenal
It is,
a
yeah.
lot of terrific work, and we met at the evening that they were honoring Quentin Tarantino.
Right. And Danny Trejo, who I'm a very big
Love.
admirer of his, and you know, he's an activist too, and that was such a great moment with him.
And the beautiful
Yeah.
Anne Margaret.
Yeah, who worked with my father actually.
Right.
They did a film.
Didn't you have a hand in so because you told me once that they brought you on board at the press club because to sort of bring together a little bit of the old Hollywood work with some of the new work and
Yes,
tie it
yes.
together
Yeah,
with
exactly.
all the great work being done in this town with the journalists.
You're right. It was to bridge the gap between the old and the new Hollywood and the more, you know, not show business, but the more film industry aspects of the press club, because they do honor a lot of film industry greats, and it's marrying those two worlds, you know. And so they brought me on board to really select honorees and bridge the gap, and also donate a lot of silent auction items and memorabilia, and also be sort of a representative of the press club when I'm out, say at the Golden Globes or different events. In a sense, I spread awareness to what the LA Press Club is about and all the great work it does.
There's no doubt about it, because you can see the way you carry yourself that you were a former Miss Golden Globe, because I picked you out of that crowd, and it was a crowd of quite, you know, interesting Hollywood types, right? And there you were in the corner, just sort of doing your work, and you just were standing out. And that's
Thank
how I
you.
met you, right? And
That's
that's when I
right.
got
That's
to learn
right.
about
Yeah.
everything that you do and your background and your pedigree. So let's go back a little bit. Growing up Hollywood with your dad and with your mom, what first interested you in terms of your own work?
Good question, because I actually I wasn't raised in Hollywood.
Seattle.
I was born here, yeah, but my parents wanted my sister and me to have a normal, quote unquote, upbringing, and moved us up to Bellevue, Washington, which is part of Seattle. It's like a
I know it
suburb,
really well. I have
yeah.
a kid who goes to school up there. So.
Well, it's a phenomenal place, but what my parents didn't know, because my dad especially didn't want us to be in the Hollywood lifestyle, but they had so much progressive theater and music up in Washington State, leading, like next to New York, the Seattle Rep, and all the music that was up there, and the big bands, and even the rock focus there was very progressive. I had a whole education in the arts, and I really went leaping into show business. When we moved up there, I became like the leading child performer in Seattle. So I never even, I had the same career there, probably even a better one than I would have had here, because there was a lot of opportunity to play roles in theater that I probably wouldn't have a chance to here. Because this is not a theater town per se, and
it's become one.
Yeah, it is
a little
now,
more,
but at
hasn't
that
it?
time it wasn't.
No, it was
Right,
not,
yeah.
but it's become one. Some of the theater they're doing here is phenomenal. And I was
Yeah.
told by a woman who represents a lot of the theaters that, in fact, some of the small theater, there's more going on here now than in New York. Is this true?
Yeah, a lot of the shows start here.
Yeah.
And I'm working on my one-person show, developing. I actually have more than one I'm working on. But I'm on the advisory board also of Los Angeles Women's Theater Festival, which is, you know, women's solo performance. We don't really, I mean, you know, it's all about women's solo performance. It doesn't have to be a one-person show. It can be a cabaret act, but it's the woman in solo performance, and that means like nobody else on stage unless it's a musical director, but they really just want to focus on female performance artists.
So when you
So
were
that's I mean, I'm very involved with theater here and very involved with that.
when you were doing theater up in Seattle, you played Annie. Is that
I
correct?
did the national tour of Annie up there, and then I did Helen Keller in The Miracle Worker.
Did you also?
And I won an award for that, Best Actress, at a very young age. I was, you know, following in my godmother's footsteps, only up there. Not,
Katharine Hepburn. Let's
Yes,
not forget
yes,
that. You know,
yes.
Katharine Hepburn is
And
your
she
godmother.
actually said, "Always be fascinating." If I imitate
Really?
her a
So you
bit.
took her advice
Yes,
quite
yes.
clearly. You also were you also in Anne Frank? Is that correct?
I did The Diary of Anne Frank, and Estella and Great Expectations, which was a reimagining of the original, and I played her from like 15 all the way to 30, so like aged all the way up, and I was only a teenager. So and then I did a lot of live performing and singing with the big bands, and because they had migrated up to Seattle from like Harry James and Count Basie, these old musicians, and I got like a huge education in the Great American Songbook. Wow. And then became like very much involved with classic rock and the Rolling Stones and the music of Mick Jagger and what he represents as an artist away from the Stones, and having a pretty big education just in the arts, which I probably wouldn't have gotten here as much. So, because like you said, since that time, we've become more artistic and more theatrical. But when I was growing up, it was just movies and TV and just really focused on that and not so much on live theater. So when I went to New York, I was already, immersed in having had training and actually doing it and performing. So when I moved there, I just went right into it and then came back out here. And I've had to really find my own niche, I think. It's taken me all these years.
You went from working in Seattle, in theater in Seattle, to New York.
And studying and working a lot of theater and studying and training. And then I moved back here. The whole family moved back here. And then it was about, how do you establish yourself being the daughter of, with all these film greats, being the offspring of that, and how do you be seen for your own work. And there's always a lot of pros and cons in being an offspring. I'm not sure people always know that there's just as much bad about it as there is good.
Here's what I...
So having to really, pave my own way and still keep the family legacy and still keep my dad's and my godmother's, her feminist approach to things, his social justice, and having that be part of me anyway, but still having to always live up to that reputation. But do my own thing.
It's funny. I was at a radio, TV, podcast convention not just like a week ago. And whenever I would meet up with people, they'd said, "Oh, did you know she's the wife of?" And I thought, hang on a minute. I'm a journalist. I've been with CNN and whatever. I had to stop them right away. In fact, I was that before I met the wife of. So I know what you mean on a small level, because your dad was on a mammoth level. So you do have to just, make sure that people know this is what I'm doing. This is what Kat is doing.
Right.
So I understand that. But yet while preserving all that, just like you said, all that your dad has done. So kudos to you, because I think you've done a marvelous job. Because you've got a resume here that I can't even keep track of. Really, honestly. Yeah. I mean, there's more even than what's on this page.
That's true. I couldn't fit all of it on.
No, you couldn't, and I could barely memorize it. So you've done theater. Let's talk a little bit about some of the people that have influenced you in your life. Let's talk about Katharine Hepburn.
Well, I have a character for in my one-woman show that I'm working on.
What's
called
the name of the
Auntie
show?
Kate. It's called My Duet with Mick, about Mick Jagger, and I don't want to give too much of this show away,
but a little bit,
because
it's fascinating. It's fascinating.
Oh, it's fascinating,
yeah.
as she says. Yes. I play a character, Auntie Kate. I play multiple characters in the show because I recorded a CD of Mick Jagger's solo music, because I always thought that he was underappreciated as a songwriter on his own. He did a lot of solo albums when he wasn't working with the Stones, when they were kind of having an internal problem. And Keith Richards also did that solo jaunt. I mean, he did his solo albums as well, but the music was it's not structured, because he's a guitar player. And Mick is not only theatrical, but he writes a song with a beginning, middle, and end with a lyric that you can actually sing, and it's an actual song. He crafts a song. So I took a lot of his individual, more love-themed songs that he wrote with a love theme, and I was lucky to get his musicians that he had worked with on his solo tour, and some that had worked with the Stones, but it was mostly, Mick Jagger himself apart from the Stones.
Wow.
I re-recorded these songs, and no one's ever covered them before. And then I want him to be on one of the tracks. That's how the show evolved, was that this dream of having Sir Mick Jagger himself participate, even if he just plays harmonica on it, because he's a great
What a
musician.
fascinating, honestly.
So
what a
I made it.
fascinating
I
idea.
created a show about it, but it's a fantasy about. It's really a parody of The Wizard of Oz, and he's the wizard trying to get down the Rolling Stones road, trying to get him to do this duet. And I play multiple characters that I meet along the way.
That is a very, very clever idea for a theater.
And it just came to me, like I didn't have to think, like it was, guided like an inspiration.
Wow.
But it's still evolving. I've mounted it before, I've done it, but I'm not constantly doing it consistently because I want to bring it up to date more. Into where we are now in 2020 and the Me Too movement, and a lot of that's going to factor into this new incarnation of the show.
When you said that Katharine Hepburn said to you always, wait, what did she say to you, her famous line?
Well, she would say a lot to me, but always be fascinating and spell it with an A. Because, I'm named after her, Katharine, but nobody ever spells it right.
I know how to spell it. You want to know why? Because my husband's brother, my niece, her name is Katharine, spelled the same way, named for Katharine Hepburn.
Oh, she is? Wow, okay.
Yeah, she is with an A. So, but you're right. No one ever spells it that way.
And yet she was my godmother, so it's not just being the namesake, but, being her godchild. And she never had any children.
What was she like?
She was everything you think she is and then a little bit more.
I think she's cool.
She was gossipy, but she also was curious about other people. Maybe more feminine than you would think, but had an opinion, but wanted to know about my opinion. And, always said to go after the work, because that's, don't just be involved with, say, helping someone without trying to get a role in their project if you really want to do this. Because I helped get her into Warren Beatty's love affair. That was her final film. And I just moved back here. So at a very, young age, I was, on the phone with him telling her this is how you woo her, because he wanted her for that role, and she wasn't really that interested in doing it. She liked to play hard to get and to pretend that she didn't know who he was. And, that was the movie he made with Annette when they first got married. That was their first project, really.
Oh.
So it's been a while, but that was her final film. And, he always, I don't think there's any actor or actress, especially actress, that doesn't consider her their top role model. So she's been a role model to me, but as you know, there's been a lot of others besides her.
Who are some of them?
Well, Lily Tomlin obviously is
and you work with her,
performing idol, but I'm also lucky and blessed to be able to work with her on getting social issues out there through my screening series, Kat Kramer's Films That Changed the World. She's the main ambassador. She's the one that's not only taken an interest in what I'm trying to do and help me with that, but she's been involved with a lot of the films, narrated one of them, hosted the events. I always have these huge panels with more than 10 people, because I not only have the people with the films, but I also have all the experts in that particular subject that we're highlighting, and she's always been on all the panels participating. And
you also did something where we
were on
honored
TV
her.
together.
Didn't you also perform?
I did.
What did you do?
Thanks
Where
for bringing that up.
Yeah,
I put together an original musical salute parody of two songs that are famous, but a musical tribute to her that had never before been done. She's never had anyone do anything like this, and I have to say it's a rare dying art now to do tributes to icons, but parody and somehow manage to get the arc of their career and all the things that they've accomplished in just a few minutes. So I did that when she was honored by the Pacific Pioneer Broadcasters at the Pioneer Lunch, and it brought down the house. It was
I
like
believe
a 5-minute standing ovation, and she endorsed it. It went viral. And I also reimagined the theme song from My Father's Bless the Beasts and Children, because she encouraged me to do that for the animals, and I performed that in front of her as well. So I'm lucky to have, that mentor. She's like a mentor to me, but I have worked with her on social issues and then also been able to do the performing through that. So it's been great having her involved with the screening series, because she's gotten a lot of other great activists like Cher and and Tippi Hedren and different people that we both mutually know to participate.
I
And
work
I'm in
with-
my 10th anniversary now.
Are you really?
Yeah, of the screening series.
Oh, that's beautiful. I work with Tippy at the Roar Foundation.
Yeah,
You know, the
and well, she's a
Shambhala.
big animal rights activist
Huge.
too, and she really led the way too. Like she was way ahead of her time with that. So she and Cher were all involved with the first one I did with Lily, but I've done like 5 with Lily on different subjects. But when Cher came and actually spoke to everybody and made comments about what was happening with the elephants, and then we were covered internationally. I'd helped get the Cove the Oscar the year before. I did the one with Sharon, Lily, and Tippy, and that really put my screening series on the map. And I've had so many people like Martin Sheen, and we had Dr. Helen Caldecott.
And again, this was for
nuclear
the
issues.
This is the screening series. What is that called? That's
Kat Kramer's films that
so
changed
that's
the world.
part of Kat Kramer's.
Well,
See,
that's all one thing.
it's all
yeah,
one
yeah.
thing, and that's just one film or one.
We do. I have a lot of support, but it's my own thing that I originated. But I have a lot of people that help me with that are activists, and it's the 10th anniversary this year. But I actually have been celebrating it for the past year or so because I want to do a film festival with the theme Sheroes for Change, as opposed to just like showing one movie or 2 movies per year. And I do them as big premieres. They're like one-offs. I don't do a film festival. I'll have like one film and focus the whole premiere around that. And the panel, this time I want to do like 5 or 6 different movies that maybe have different subjects, but they're all made by women, and it's all women making a change. So that's a little
fantastic.
bit different than what I've done.
Where are you thinking you might do that? Because I'd love to go. Where would that be?
Well, I used to have them always at Sunset Gower Studios because my father made most of his films at Columbia. A lot of his films towards the end of his career, towards the later half,
we
and
used to
that
do our
used to
show
be
there.
Columbia.
We used to do our show there, and then we moved over to the Warner Brothers complex, and then a lot of times I do it here out of West LA. So we've been all over. But
Well, I always had it there, and they don't, because my father we have the Stanley Kramer screening room there, which is a very small screening room just for like editing and
Right.
seeing rough cuts. I had my first one there with Yentl, with Barbara Streisand's Yentl, for only 90 people. That's how it was. It's a very small facility. And the minute that happened, there was such a demand for my screening series that I had to move to a soundstage for the Cove. And I finally outgrew that, so I used different locations on the lot, including the Canon screening room, which is adjoining that. And then I took it off the lot and went to UCLA when I had the hunting ground for the 9th anniversary, because that was about the raping of students on college campuses. And so I wanted to have it actually at a college campus. And
wow.
And so that really was very controversial, but that's what the movie was all about. And then the last one after that was the most recent, was another elephant rescue film. You may have heard of it. It's Love and Bananas, an elephant story.
I have.
And Ashley Bell, who's she's an actress, but that was her first film as a director producer. And that's when I started the Sheroes for Change theme for the anniversary, and we moved the whole screening series for that particular event to the Real D screening facility in Beverly Hills, which is a great venue that they usually use for Oscar viewing purposes for
That's a
films
terrific
that are.
venue. It's just large enough, but not so consuming that people are going to get lost there. That's fantastic.
But I'm gonna have the rest of the series at Raleigh Studios at the Charlie Chaplin Theater.
That's charming over there. Now you also
Because my
didn't-
father used to have his offices when Raleigh was Sunset Studios. He had offices there when he made On the Beach. So I really like to keep the spirit of my father, because I feel that he guides me when I do the screening series, because it's all social issue films, new films by filmmakers. A lot of times they don't even have distribution yet, so I give them a focus and get the movies out there to a larger audience.
Do you vet these films yourself?
Oh, absolutely. I sometimes get 12 different movies or 20 different movies that are roughly the same subject, and I can, at the time, when I first started, could only choose one. And so now I'm branching out, maybe having more than one on the subject, but all the ones I did were very focused on, the activists, the stars that were behind the film, behind the movement, and that the issues were very specific, and I tried not to repeat them.
Didn't you also do a film about women in the Congo?
Yes,
What was the name of that?
Well, I didn't make the film. What we did was I decided to present Yentl for my launch, for the very first one during Women's History Month. And Barbara Streisand had just released Yentl on DVD, and so she gave me the director's cut. And I wanted to make it a basically women-only audience. I mean, not that I was excluding men, but it was a Women's History Month, a women's issue. And I decided, instead of focusing on women in film, which would be the logical choice, that I would take a world issue affecting women and make that the running, benefactor and theme of the screening. And so I highlighted Raise Hope for Congo and Women in the Congo and the Enough Project. And then we flew women over from the Congo that were actually representatives of the Enough Project to speak at the event.
See, this
that
to
was
me,
my launch, though. That was my very first one.
This to me is the important stuff that we do in in this business. Clearly, you want films that make you feel good and you have a good time and you laugh, but this is the stuff that, at least looking at it, appeals to me, because you can learn so much and you can get involved by watching these films.
That's right. They change the world.
They change the world. Kat Kramer's
films that change the world.
Films that change the world. And
they're not my films. That's the thing. I don't make the films. They're other people's films that I host, moderate the panels, present. I basically give them a life, and eventually want to have distribution with it so I can distribute them as well.
There's so much that we have to do.
On a channel would be good.
That would be fantastic. Yeah. So I'm sure, knowing you, that you're in talks with somebody, right?
I have some ideas.
To get your work on a channel.
Yeah,
I know
absolutely.
You're probably already ahead of my question.
Yeah, but these things take a long time,
They take a crazy
and the
amount
more
of
that
time.
we make change, the more that that we push against the grain in society, the more that we take steps back, it seems.
How do you think we're doing, honestly, women in film, whether it's not just acting and the respect that we should have and give ourselves, but the directing, the producing? How are we doing?
Well, I will say that just from the independent side of things, and this brings us up to date, I'm fortunate to be in a film now that I'm one of the stars of, and I'm also a co-producer on it. They cast me first, and then they asked me, would you...
What's the name?
It's called Turnover. And it's all women behind the scenes primarily. It's a woman writer, director, women cinematographer, sound, all the makeup and hair crew. But I mean, to have a DP in the sound and these more male-driven jobs, they're all by women on this one film, which was very low budget. But we've won a slew of awards. We're going to be on Amazon Prime sometime this spring. And I was lucky to win Best Supporting Actress for that role that I created, and beat out a lot of people in that category at the Love International Film Festival, which is movies from all over the world. It's not just focused here in Hollywood.
This is
it's all
huge.
over the world. So
this is a big deal. Early on in your career.
So you asked how we were doing with that. That's a step right there. And I'm doing another project with Linda Palmer, who's the writer-director of Turnover. She's doing a series called Civil Disobedience, and about voting and not just because of the election. I mean, I'm sure that's a little bit about why she wants to do this, but it's an anthology of short films that will become a series, and actual true stories about voting and that process. So I'm happy to be part of that project coming up.
Clearly, do you have a large team? Or, I mean, how do you, because you have your hands in a little bit of everything, the philanthropy, the hands-on philanthropy, the filmmaking, keeping your dad's memory alive through work and family. I know that you don't have children, but you might as well have 100 because of all the work you do.
Yeah, I'm like my godmother in that sense. She
children.
never wanted children because she was too career focused,
well,
and I'm the same. I don't think I would have time. I wouldn't be good at that because I wouldn't be giving them enough time. I'm too focused on.
I couldn't agree with
these
you more.
missions.
I totally get that.
Good,
because if you have something that you need to give or say, you can't divide yourself. I support that. I really support. I think more of us need to support that too. When you have work to do that's meaningful.
Well, my
that's
mom
your
always
children.
taught me that, right?
Yeah.
That your work is your children. I mean, she had my sister and me, but she was a very prolific actress and award winner herself. And then when she met my father, she basically gave up her career and focused on him, and they worked together. And then she wanted to be a mom a really dedicated mom, so she didn't pursue her career after that. And now she's producing a lot of projects.
It does. I don't like the word holds you back, but a lot of women they stopped for a while, and I'm going to be speaking at a conference in Atlanta about influencers of a certain age. It's mostly people over 40. And how a lot of us just sort of stopped. And the one thing I'm going to say to women is, if you want to, great, but you don't have to. You can keep yourself involved and find that village. It's great to have mom nearby if we can to help us. But when you step out sometimes, it's a little rough to step back in. It takes a lot of time to do that. So if you're dedicated to what you're doing,
well, the only hard thing for me is that I'm not just acting or just singing or just I'm trying to, and I write and I also promote and I am a spokesperson for things. Yes.
You're a journalist.
Yeah.
What have you written?
Well, I've written a lot of entertainment-focused things, but I want to move beyond that, Not that I want to write about politics, but I do write about more world issues and have interviewed filmmakers and done one-on-ones with, actors and talk to them about things beyond just their work. But that's, I'm not a Hollywood type journalist, but I do cover a lot of entertainment focused things.
Right, but I could see just standing next to you, I sort of feel it coming from you. It's not just entertainment oriented, but with a purpose.
Exactly.
You are
it has
clearly
to have a purpose.
Purpose driven person. Let's talk a little bit about I don't know. Who inspires? I don't really like that word. It's overused, but who inspires and motivates you, male or female?
So many. I
know.
I don't even want to mention their names because I'll leave somebody out.
Don't you hate that? Somebody, like when you think, clearly Lily, because you
well,
work
Lily
with Lily
Tomlin,
quite a
because
bit.
of her one-person shows and the characters she's created.
She's
the
one
biggest
of the,
inspiration.
She's one of those people I've never yet to meet in Hollywood.
Well,
and you know how you're out.
I just saw her a couple nights ago, so
I admire her.
I'm just blessed
so
that she was able to work with me on, and then hopefully I'll be able to work with her in a bigger project. That's my real goal. And she was on TV with me and radio, and of course Jane Fonda, who we gave the Stanley Kramer Award to last year. That's my sister's idol, by the way. My sister Jennifer, that's her lifelong idol. So this was a big family thing, being able to give Jane the Stanley Kramer Award at the Producers Guild last year. And we were just with her at the Fire Drill Fridays, the first one here. And then, this year we gave Bombshell the Stanley Kramer Award.
Right, and didn't Charlize get that?
Charlize and Jay Roach and Charles Randolph, the whole team behind it.
I just spoke to Jay Roach the other day. He's fascinating.
Yeah.
He's so low-key. And I love the way he did that film and how he really captured the feeling of these women very subtly. Don't you think? He was
well, the movie
terrific.
was very fast-paced, too. It wasn't slow. You felt like you were, really there. And it was just uncanny how they recreated that whole, moment in history and how you really believed you were watching them. Mm-hmm. But the Stanley Kramer Award is something that we've established at the Producers Guild, my mom and me, in 2002. So it's been around for a while. And that is, in the sense, like my screening series, it's not related, but it's honoring films and filmmakers that are following in the Stanley Kramer footsteps of social justice films. And we've only given it to 2 individuals.
Is that right?
Yeah, Sean Penn and Jane Fonda are individuals. The rest were all films and filmmakers of a movie that was really part of the awards conversation.
Wow. I have here Rob Reiner, Eddie Murphy, Oprah. What were they a part of?
Well, we also have a Stanley Kramer Social Justice Award at the African American Film Critics Association, separate from the Producers Guild, but they are like during award season, but they're 2 totally different groups. Rob Reiner was one of the first recipients of that, and then Quincy Jones, and then this year we gave it to the Women of Harriet, the focus film Harriet about Harriet Tubman, and I chose that specifically because, kind of following in the Bombshell theme, this is the year of the woman, so the women standing up for their rights being the theme that we wanted to focus on. And it was the team of Harriet, not just Cynthia Erivo, the star, but it's all female director, producers, they all got the award. And then I had my own screening of it the day before.
Where do you do your own screenings a lot of times? Just
Well, it wasn't a Kat Kramer's Films That Changed the World full-blown production, but I have an outreach program that I'm doing beyond that, where I'm taking current films that are historical or have a social message that the deaf community needs to see, because I advocate a lot for the deaf community in entertainment and at large. I'm very much also an advocate for, the disabilities community and the differently abled, and I really lead the pack on, if there's a role for a differently abled person, then it should be a differently abled person playing it, not someone who's able-bodied. And in Turnover, we had 2 Down syndrome actors playing Down syndrome characters, and then I brought the deaf in by saying we should have one of the characters be deaf, and the director had already come up with that idea. We changed one of the characters to a deaf character, but she wanted to cast a hearing actress, and I said, no, you have to actually have a deaf actress in that role. I mean, there's a huge movement now to make sure that it's authentic. So we brought in a deaf actress. We also had a lot of deaf talent, and I've been presenting films in open caption for the past few years, and then moderating a sign language ASL interpreted panel. So we did that with Harriet, and we had a huge crowd for that. And the LA Press Club also invited a lot of people to that screening. So it was at Arena Cine Lounge, right? Right there in the building.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
I read just the other day, in fact, it was yesterday, where people are saying it's not so extraordinary, okay, to see a black and a white person marry anymore, right?
Right.
So
right.
it would be phenomenal through your films and through people talking about it if so many other issues aren't shocking anymore.
Well, right,
exactly. And that's what I know you're doing, to highlight more people that are disabled, or how did you call it? People
differently able. They don't
differently
really like
able.
to be called
I like
disabled
that.
anymore, but there's a huge movement right now for that. I mean,
Differently
there's
abled,
There's
right?
like a new group together with a lot of the actors that are differently abled and able-bodied fighting for their representation. I know Danny DeVito's very much behind that, and
But
to
see,
make sure that we also cast. For instance, if there's a role on a series for an attorney, they don't have to be able-bodied. They could be a paraplegic, or they could be,
How about
you know
this?
what I'm saying? You don't
More
have
believable,
to have that.
more like
Yeah.
what's really
what's
out there.
real life.
But I like the
right.
word differently abled, and also the LBGTQ community.
Right. Which I advocate for as well.
I know you do. And let's just keep the dialogue going. So just like with Look Who's Coming to Dinner.
Guess.
Guess Who's Coming to Dinner was so shocking. And
At
now,
the time, right. And
now it's not anymore,
no.
because he pushed that first envelope the way that you're starting to push the envelope here, which is it's really okay. And same with the animal work that you do, which is really fantastic.
Well, we really need to keep that going. I mean, it's not that all these issues, but that we still, there's so much animal cruelty and the poaching and getting the animals, especially the elephants, out of the zoos and circuses. We just banned wildlife in entertainment and in circuses, just like it's finally officially banned in LA. It happened in other states and cities, but we just banned it in the last few days. So, but I'm also focusing on, as you mentioned, doing a lot of being a spokesperson and spreading awareness. One of my idols is Al Pacino. You talked about actors who influence you so great. I was really behind The Irishman this past award season.
What did you do with The Irishman?
I just
what are you not behind?
just got behind it and spread awareness and went to every single Q&A and brought people, and it had 10 Oscar nominations. They didn't win anything, but
that was a little surprising.
That's winning on its own,
It is, absolutely. But it was a little surprising that they didn't come home with really much. Now,
I don't want to get into the whole
politics
of it.
Behind all that. Just do the films that you do. That's what's important.
Right.
And then let them figure that out.
But Al himself, is doing he's very involved, as you know, in theater and Shakespeare. But this isn't actually Shakespeare, though it is for Shakespeare Center LA, which I'm sure you know about.
Yeah.
They work a lot with veterans and youth.
This is fantastic.
It's a great organization. Tom Hanks is actually one of their main supporters, and he's even performed for them and done a lot of programs and sponsored. But coming up on March 8th, Al is going to be reprising one of his Tony Award-winning roles. It's an anti-war play by David Rabe called The Basic Training of Pavlo Hummel. it hasn't really been done much, but he won a Tony for it in 1977. And this is a benefit for NAVSO and Shakespeare Center LA, and it's for veterans and military families.
And that's a reading.
And it's going to be a stage reading.
That's exciting. I promise you I'm going to attend
yes,
that.
I want you to come to that. But I'm doing a lot of outreach and sponsorship. I'm not in it, unfortunately, because there's no role that I fit. But I'm doing the next best thing, which is, getting people to sponsor it and buy tickets, and because it really supports a great cause.
Fantastic.
And it's at the Wallace.
Let's
So
tell
you
people-
all heard it here, and you can go to, it's up on the site now, shakespearecenter.org, I think is the website.
When is that? Do you know when?
March 8th.
March 8th.
It's
So
a
one
Sunday
night only.
night.
One
a
night
one-night
only.
only stage reading. And I'm happy to be plugging it because I'll be there. My mom will be there, and
I'll be there.
and I want you there.
I will be there.
And,
I will be there.
I
I'm
know
very excited.
it's for war veterans, and there's free tickets for ones that are actually serving now. That if they go to the website.
Have you worked closely with the veterans, like the Veterans Administration?
Yeah,
here?
I've done a lot to support. In fact, I had a little video to promote my Mick Jagger project, actually, of all things, and I got all these veterans on there to say, "Hey, Mick, do a duet with Kat."
Oh,
and
I
to
love that.
support
That's
it.
so
Isn't
cute.
that funny? Many
I love
years
them
ago.
over there, and we have to do more for them over there.
Well, I
because,
think we need to do a lot for them.
Yeah, we really do. They're
and
just
for the
sort of-
families, and this is for the Shakespeare Center, which a lot of people don't know, they get them involved with the productions. Like they built the one Tom Hanks did, they built the whole set. This was in 2018, and they work a lot with veterans. That's like their main focus, and also youth. And of course, I'm very involved with the educational student outreach. So I have some ideas. I'm kind of giving this away now prematurely, but some ideas for them coming up, and also hopefully to involve the deaf community. Because they're so creative and they're so active, and there's so many deaf filmmakers, and there's so many deaf performers beyond Marlee Matlin. There's a lot of that on
Right,
shows.
she's the only one that we've ever heard of for years, and it was
But
like
there's so much representation, Deborah, even
Exactly.
on Switched at Birth.
Exactly.
And, when they brought back Spring Awakening for the revival with Deaf West.
Mm-hmm,
So I've also performed for ASL Cabaret, which used to be, I don't know if they're doing it so much
What
now.
is that,
but
ASL?
It was an actual variety show for the deaf and hearing, but primarily deaf and hearing performers who did comedy and music and dancing and, like a variety show. So it was a cabaret variety show, and there were so many great performers that have won Tony Awards that were part of Spring Awakening. When that came back, when they revived that with Deaf West, that really opened up, the deaf community to the mainstream. And now you see a lot of representation, but there needs to be more. So that's why I take these films that are only captioned when you get the DVD or the screener, because a lot of them are SAG and DGA and Writers Guild, they're voting members.
Right. She's talking
Right.
about the DVDs that you get in the mail when you're a member. of
Right,
that.
or even when they come out
Right.
out on DVD, but they don't get to see the film during the FYCs.
Right.
And we're talking strictly, show business here, but they don't get to see the films and experience the Q&A when they're watching it on a DVD. So it shuts them out of any kind of access.
That is perhaps my favorite of them all. You should do more than that. I actually host many film festivals, and I that's my favorite, the Q&A with people, because
Well, I moderate all of them, and
I think that's fantastic.
And I've been a guest moderator for a lot of things, but I'm wanting to do more of that. And what I think separates me from, because there's a lot of Q&As that happen, and a lot of people are not aware that people are constantly out there spreading awareness about their own films. But when you moderate with the deaf community and you have interpreters, but it's also for hearing,
Right.
when you show the open caption, they're getting a chance to see the screenplay. Because the dialogue is there, and so you're reading the stage directions. So it really helps the screenwriter get a lot of attention on the screenplay. So it's a great thing with the Writers Guild as well.
We only actually have a few minutes. We've been talking for a long time, but why do you feel so deeply? I know it's been ingrained in you as a kid, but clearly everything you do has to have something inside. You feel things very deeply, don't you?
I
Don't
can't
you?
really do surface things. I mean, even there I look for some kind of a I mean, like I'm on this, not that I would say it's surface, but I'm on a web series called Child of the 70s, which is a very campy, just to be able to create the characters I created.
What is that about? I have that written
It's
down.
we just finished. It ended. The fifth season ended, and it dropped last year. It was launched, and it got a lot of attention. And Michael Vaccaro, who's a great actor and a writer, he created this web series for himself. A concept he had about an actor from New York who loved television icons from the 70s, and moves out here and works for one of his idols, a fictitious character named Kiki Lawrence. Then he ends up on a soap opera, and it's about his journey, but it's also an LGBTQ focused show. So they had all those elements going. But they chose me to play Frances Rye to create this, like, I wouldn't say like Susan Lucci, but it's a fictitious,
That's funny.
over the top kind of Joan Crawford, Joan Collins type soap opera star who's basically a real diva. And through that character, she morphs into other characters because she goes in disguise in the story. She spies on people, but I actually created full-bodied characters, like 2 male characters.
It's pretty cool.
And what I want to do with that, Deborah, is take them, much like Lily did. She would create characters on Laugh-In, but then they would show up in other shows and projects. So I want to take these characters and perform them and give them a life outside of just Child of the 70s. So that gave me a chance to create those. But it was a very, I wouldn't say silly show, but it's very campy and it's fun, but there's no real social relevance in the show. But I did help cast a lot of it as an associate producer, and I had a chance to create these characters, which is why I did it.
I don't want to forget before I let you go to talk about Mother's Day memories.
Yes, I was just going to bring that up.
Yeah.
That's socially relevant.
Would we expect
issue.
anything less, please? I mean, everything. Tell us about that briefly.
It's a short film written and co-produced and starring Bill Hoverston, and he's an actor, but this was his first time as a producer, and it's the true story of his mother who had Alzheimer's and how he had to deal with that. Oof. And a phenomenal director, co-writer with him, Matthew Ross, who I've worked with before, cast me in that, and I play his wife, based on his real wife, but they changed the story somewhat. And it's really all about how his mother spirals downhill from having Alzheimer's and how it affects the family dynamics. And I got Alzheimer's LA to endorse it and give us a quote, and we were just at the Real Independent Film Festival just a few days ago, and we debuted at LA Shorts. So that's on the festival circuit. Really important film, and it's probably going to be hopefully in the awards conversation coming up.
Anybody you want to give a shout out to? People you love, people who have helped you, just anybody.
I don't know, my mom and sister right now. There's so many people that have helped me, and that I've also tried to help them. We'd be here all day. It's hard to. I'm sure I'll forget something.
Yeah, I know. So you're very careful. You don't want to leave anyone out. Could you imagine when these people accept their awards, whether it's an Oscar or whatever, I think you're leaving out somebody. And when they start to leave out their significant other, I start to yell through the television, don't forget, because that happens often. And you're someone who just doesn't want to leave anyone out, right? So it's better to maybe just not go there. You must have a Rolodex. I can't even imagine how long and how thick.
Yeah, it's I guess, there's just a lot of things I'm working on coming up that are premature, but I'm just thank everyone who's involved with those, basically.
Well, I want to thank you for really highlighting some things that are personal to me, the animals, women, people who look different and who are different, because and also the struggles that everybody goes through. I think that's, to me, when I go see a film, I like that's what I like to see. Where I can lay there and call somebody and say, you know what? And that's what you do. That's the kind of performer and the kind of...
You're right.
Yeah.
And Turnover is so much about that, too. It's about diversity and inclusion and acceptance. Besides the differently abled cast that's in it and the story, the whole movie is about that, and it's a family film.
And how do people see that, Turnover?
Well, it's going to be on Amazon. Mm-hmm. We had a limited release last year, but as a co-producer on it, I can say that it will be on Amazon. It will be available, but it's it's going to be coming out. It's going to have distribution from an independent company, but it's a little bit early to say which. But you'll be able to see it and access it more this year.
Beautiful.
But it was at all the film festivals. Besides the award that I was happy to win, you know, we won Manhattan International Comedy Festival, Idlewild. I mean, all the main. Gina Davis had it at her festival.
Yeah,
and it's gotten a lot of accolades and really been embraced by the independent community, so to speak.
And there's a tremendous amount of work that goes into even getting those seen at these festivals. I mean, just all of it. It's layer upon layer. But clearly, you grew up in the business. You know how to get it done. I don't know. I just really appreciate you being here. I find you to be beautiful and fascinating.
Well, thank you so much for having me, and I'm so glad that you also are involved with getting the word out there, and especially, you know, supporting women's issues and women's rights, because we still need that. You know, it's the 100th anniversary of women being able to vote this year.
That's right.
And 2020, and, you know, just...
We've come a long way, but we really do have to continue to push the envelope, you know,
because there was no women directors nominated at all at the Oscars this year. So that'll show you that even though there's so many of them that were in the that were nominated for other award shows, like at the Golden Globes and whatever, they weren't recognized by the Academy, and that's a problem. You know, we still need to push for diversity.
Yeah, I mean, what do you do in a case like that, though? I mean, you know, you have a voting team, basically, and did they not think about it, or was it an oversight, or in a case like that, what do you think?
I don't know, because there were so many women filmmakers this year.
There were.
This past time.
And then I heard that, well, there were so many great films we couldn't choose, but... You know, I do.
Yeah, they have 10 Best Picture nominations, so they can choose.
They can choose. Yeah. So, and I get the feeling that you're going to make sure that people know that. I'm all about it. So, thank you very much for being here, and thank you for Mom actually for coming as well. She was a lot of fun. Sure. And I guess I'll see you on March 8th, if not before then.
Yes, I may see you before, but definitely March 8th.
Yeah, and
it's going to be it's going to be important because of not only seeing him perform, but the issue.
Right. That's at the Wallace on March 8th for those people who are in Los Angeles, because our show is actually seen everywhere. And of course, Turnover, that's going to be coming out. Mother's Day Memories. You've got so much going on. And you'll keep us apprised, right? Because
Absolutely.
Once you're on my show, I call you a friend of the show. And then I always bring you back.
Oh, yeah. I want to come back for sure.
When you have interesting projects. So that's kind of fun. So
Absolutely. And the next Kat Kramer's Films That Changed the World coming up soon. It will be this year.
Kat Kramer's Films That Changed the World. You can't forget the name of that because it's long and unique. So thank you so much for being here. And thank you, everybody, for joining us for Deborah Kobylt Live. Now, you can find us on Facebook and YouTube. And for those that listen to their podcasts, you can find us on iHeartRadio. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Honestly, wherever you get your... podcasts or listen to them, you'll find us. Put in Deborah Kobylt Live and like us as well. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it. Thank you, Kat Kramer.
Thank you. Thanks.
See you next time. Bye.